Today, I have the privilege of sitting down with someone who has had an enormous impact on my life, career, and the way I think about entrepreneurship and giving back. Larry Levy is one of the great American builders.
I heard the word entrepreneur, which I had not heard before. I said, that's me. And that never left me. The degree to which you exceed people's expectations is how much you're winning. To this day, I can't stop being ambitious.
Welcome to the Long Game Podcast. I'm Eric Becker. I'm an author, an entrepreneur, and I'm founder and chairman of Crescent, a family office that we built to serve founders, multi-gen business owners, and their families. For all of the entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs, for leaders and CEOs, the long game is for you. It's the practices, it's the leadership skills, it's the culture that can stand the test of time. I'm Eric Becker, and this is The Long Game. He co-founded Levy Restaurants, a company that completely reinvented the way we experience food and hospitality in sports and entertainment. Today, if you're sitting in a luxury suite or anywhere in a ballpark, an arena, or a major event anywhere in the country, enjoying an incredible meal and experience, chances are you're experiencing the model Larry helped pioneer. But the story didn't start with stadiums or global scale. It started with something far more humble. A young real estate developer and his brother started a delicatessen in Water Tower Place in Chicago, and a family willing to roll up their sleeves with vision, creativity, and an obsession with exceeding expectations. That small venture became a company that transformed an entire industry. Larry has also spent decades giving back, mentoring entrepreneurs and supporting philanthropy across Chicago, and helping shape the next generation of founders through the Levy Institute for Entrepreneurial Practice at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management. On a personal note, Larry has been one of the most important mentors in my life. When I was a college student, I somehow convinced the Levy team to give me an internship. Larry isn't just someone who gives advice, he opens doors and he believes in people. He's an entrepreneur, a builder, a mentor, a philanthropist, and one of the great champions of Chicago. And most importantly to me, he's a longtime friend. So Larry, welcome. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Thanks, Eric. I'm excited about this and very proud of you.
Thank you. So I'd love to start at the beginning, St. Louis. I know that that's where those are your origins. And so let's talk about where you came from and what it was like growing up there.
So I grew up in the same house my mother and her 7 siblings grew up in. We left when I was about 8. My dad went into several businesses, went to work for several people before he started his own independent record company distributorship in his 20s.
Is that when you think about, so like when I visit your offices, you have amazing photographs of rock and roll groups. So I know you love music. And I know that one time you told me that your dad would often take people to restaurants. I think it was on the Hill in St. Louis. Did your love of food and music come from that whole time there?
100%. And it was Italian food. St. Louis was famous for, the Hill was all Italian. That's where Yogi Berra and Joe Garagiola came from, and Stan Musial, the great Hall of Fame baseball player, had a restaurant there with an Italian-American. So, yeah, my dad was a foodaholic. He loved food. His heroes were restaurateurs. And one of the anecdotal kind of research they've done at the Kellogg School in our program is that they find that there is a very strong need by entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, whether male or female, to have their father's approval. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that my brother and I wanted to please him by opening restaurants. And he didn't get to see beyond the first restaurant, but I think that's why we did it.
Amazing. And how did you find your way to Northwestern University and to Chicago?
A fellow that I admired a lot went to Northwestern. I came to Chicago, visited his fraternity. I said, that's where I'd like to go to school. I applied to one school, got in. But what I saw when I came there was Chicago with the big, beautiful buildings and an amazing skyline and the nicest people I ever met in my life, which is true to this day, and fell in love with Chicago. And I've really never left other than winters.
Right, and probably at the beginning, you weren't able to leave for the early winters. It wasn't
That's
until
true too.
a little bit
That's true.
later.
Yeah.
So at Northwestern, how did Northwestern end up influencing your interest in business and entrepreneurship, or did that come later?
No, I was an entrepreneur at Northwestern as an undergraduate. In my freshman year, I started a laundry service where some of my fraternity brothers would, working for me, would go pick up people's what they called rough dry in those days, underwear and sheets and stuff like that, and we would pick it up, send it back by the end of the week. I made a deal with a local dry cleaner, and it became a decent sized business. I was making $5,000 or $6,000 a year the first year, and a little more the second year. I booked bands for fraternities and sororities. Eventually, I um, um, sold flights to Europe 2 summers, and I didn't know it till later, but I was the largest depositor at the First National Bank of Evanston because I had $250,000 of deposits. And the final thing I did as an undergraduate was I created a coupon booklet. So I sold $6,000-7,000 worth of those a year, and did it in front of the football stadium on football games in the fall, and that became a good business.
So how did you find your way initially to real estate? How did you get into the real estate business?
I had a friend from business school who was in the commercial real estate business, and he told me that a charismatic guy he met was starting a new real estate brokerage company, and that he would only hire people with no experience, but well-educated, persuasive, and I took the job, and, within 2 years, I became the president of that company. I was, brokering 50% of the income of that company, and, and then I left 2 years later and started the Levy organization, which was to, develop real estate.
Which is incredible. I mean, you were young, and these are the early days of really entrepreneurship. I mean, back then, while it sounds like that Northwestern was supportive of entrepreneurship, but there weren't incubators and venture capital firms looking to fund startups. I mean, it was just a different time, and so that's just so interesting. It must have been almost like a lonely path that there wasn't anybody else out there doing what you were doing.
It was a lonely path at what became the Kellogg School at Northwestern because, there were no entrepreneur classes. There was a one-credit, thing you went to on Thursday nights where you could meet successful and unsuccessful entrepreneurs in conversation, which was my favorite class. And, but I when I heard the word entrepreneur, which I had not heard before, I went to Northwestern, I said, "That's me." And that never left me.
That is amazing and so inspiring. But ultimately, you moved yourself into downtown Chicago and into the real estate scene in the city. How did that transition going from like industrial and land development, how did that transition happen?
I got a call one day from 2 guys that were struggling to build an office building near O'Hare, and they wanted to talk to me about being their partner in that, and I had an ulterior motive because I knew they owned the corner of Michigan and Oak, which in Chicago is across the street from the Drake Hotel, probably the best piece of property for mixed use, maybe in the country at the time. And I met with them on a Saturday morning, And they said, "Well, we own a lot more than the parking lot at where the building burned down at the corner of Michigan and Oak." It wrapped around Walton Street and, housed the original Playboy Club and had a famous jeweler and a famous hairdresser, and I said, "Would you sell it?" And then they proceeded to tell me about all of the famous developers that gave up on it, that wanted to buy it, and I said again, "Would you sell it?" And they said, "If somebody was dumb enough to pay $250 a foot," and before they finished the sentence, I said, "I'll take it." And we made a deal, and I got to build my dream building, and that's where you worked, where the office was, where, my mother lived, my in-laws lived, and, an awful lot of companies started there, but it was a hard building to build.
Well, I think that's one of the things that is so interesting about entrepreneurship is that people, even today, walk by that building and they see, part of the Chicago skyline and that incredible location, also catty-corner to Oak Street Beach. I mean, it's just spectacular, the views, and they think that it's an unbelievable success. But what I do remember is at one point when I was your intern, going on runs with you, and you talked about how interest rates were going up and that at one point, I think you were paying 21% interest, which is like the highest interest rate I think it's what, like credit card rates.
And I had borrowed $100 million. Shocking. And dumb enough to personally guarantee it. Not because I didn't have too much to lose, but, it was really something. But I will tell you that I felt for the 2.5 years it took to build the building, like I had a shop class clamp on my head,
Mhm.
and yet I had to be, confident and motivate people and keep trying and trying and trying. And I think I made my reputation on that project because everyone got paid back. I didn't make any money for 2.5 years, somehow endured. And it really, people would say, you can count on Larry, no matter what happens, we'll get paid back.
Well, and what was also amazing, and I do remember seeing how stressful it was, but also how exciting. Like I remember as that building came out of the ground, it was contemporary and new, where there wasn't anything else like it, and or around it. So there was a lot of excitement. And then seeing you persevere, basically doing what needed to be done, maintaining a positive outlook, the culture of the Levy organization, it was and the development of the food business. So, was it around that time that you opened DB Kaplan's in
Yes,
Water
DB
Tower?
Kaplan actually opened 7 years before that building was finished. And it was, I think it was not a full-time commitment, it was backing someone, but I would call it, with hands-on,
Mhm.
and, that person turned out to be a disappointment to us, and my brother and I got very active. We brought our mother from St. Louis, who was a great cook and had tremendous recipes from all of her sister-in-laws, and put a lot of her recipes in the restaurant, and I would say saved the restaurant and became the start of what became a very big company.
And so that's where the Levy organization was coming into being and, really an incredible journey having both real estate and being a builder, of important projects like, building One Magnificent Mile, but then also being an operator and building, a true operating business in food, which is incredible as well. Did the 2 of those go together? Was that intentional in some way, or was it more accidental and you liked having both?
I liked having both. I don't think they were coordinated or took some of the same skill sets. I was not a great operator. We had to have great operations people working with us, and, Andy Lansing, who is now the CEO of the company and has been for, 23 years, Andy really was a great operator, and, Mark and I were great at bringing it in business and creative concepts, and we both have great taste buds. So we were able to capture the pulse of what people wanted to eat and in the environment they wanted to eat it in. But we never got good at operations until Andy took over.
And so here the company is almost 50 years old, I think you were saying, and he's CEO. That's longevity. That's playing the long game, which is awesome.
Right. There have been two CEOs, me and him.
Incredible. So, so let's talk about Levy Restaurants and some of these moments of truth in what has become a very, very large enterprise. Um, like opening Spiaggia. So you talked about the Italian restaurants in St.
Right.
Louis. Spiaggia was a big, big deal for Chicago. Was that one of the milestones in the development of Levy Restaurants?
Yes, Spiaggia was definitely a milestone. The Chicago at the time, the fancy restaurants were all French. I didn't particularly like French food. I like bistro French food. We eventually opened a French bistro. Italian food was in my blood in the neighborhood I grew up in St. Louis. And we decided to make this a Alto Cucina, very high-end Italian. We did a lot of research in Italy. The beaches in Italy are called La Spiaggia, and this restaurant with 30-foot ceilings faced Lake Michigan and the Oak Street Beach. We didn't miss a thing.
So that was very big for Chicago and big for Levy Restaurants. Before I left to start my first business, I remember that Jerry Reinsdorf had bought the White Sox, and you were then looking at the possibility of doing the food for the skyboxes, and you ended up sending me out to interview some of the skybox owners to see what kinds of things, how they thought about the existing setup and what they wanted in something new. And this, of course, ended up becoming an incredible business. But talk a little bit about that as a moment of truth. Was that out of the blue, something unexpected that came along?
Yes, it was out of the blue. They built the boxes before they sold them, and they struggled to sell them. You came back with your report that what people wanted. They didn't know if it was a season ticket. They didn't know if it was corporate entertaining. And what they wanted was a variety of very good food. And by this time, we had, I believe, 8 restaurants. And we developed a menu that they would order a day ahead of time. We would prepare the food in the restaurants. Our only investment was a little truck that would go around to the 8 restaurants and pick up the orders for that day. And we had like a closet to heat up the food, and people went crazy over the food. They thought it was fantastic. And we realized that if the same food was served heated up in the restaurants from which they came, that it would be sent back. And so we said, they have very low expectations, and we're dramatically exceeding them. And that became my truth for how well you're doing in anything.
Mhm.
The degree to which you exceed people's expectations is how much you're winning and winning customers. And when they offered it to us, we said, we're not institutional food service company. That's Aramark and Sports Service. And Reinsdorf said, well, we're the new owners of the team. We're going to spend whatever it takes to get the best baseball players here, and we're going to give you seats in the front row when we're in the World Series. And we said yes right away. Well, I mean, it's just, you never know where opportunity is coming from, and total fluke. And to put that in perspective, Levy Restaurants, I sold it 20 years ago. Today is a $4.5 billion business with 50,000 employees. And I think we'll keep going for another 100 years.
which is incredible. And I think about, what I learned during the short time I was an intern about restaurants where you had all the capital costs. You'd spend potentially millions of dollars to open a restaurant, and then either it's successful or it's not successful. If it's successful, you get a return on the investment. If not, that capital is gone. And here, these incredible venues, you were getting them and you didn't have to invest millions of dollars into building them, which was amazing, really amazing. Better business model.
The first contracts we won, it was a profit sharing split with the new stadium, and we started doing huge volumes in those boxes. We learned that our per capita sales were twice what the legacy caterers were, and eventually we started doing the whole stadiums and arenas. And the company now has 450 accounts. And when I sold the company, there were about 90 accounts and spread through 41 cities in the United States. Now it's all over the world. I can brag about the company because I don't own it anymore. In the month of March, the company did all the food service at the Super Bowl, the NBA All-Star Game, the Grammy Awards, the Australian Open, and the Daytona 500. It's the same leadership team I left behind, and that's why I think it will be a 100-year-old company because the culture is set. It's the same culture Mark and my mother and I left behind. More than half of the senior leaders from the beginning were women, which is very unusual, and it's just a great company, and I'm very proud of it.
You should be. It's such an incredible entrepreneurial story. And so when you think of the culture at Levy Restaurants, what are a couple of the things that come to your mind of how you created a great culture? What were some of the secrets to that?
So the employee manual first sentence was, "We only hire nice people with great smiles," and I think that says it all. We're happy you're here. We want you to enjoy what we can bring to you. We had a culture that if you didn't like what you ate, you didn't have to pay for it. We had a whole crash team that whenever there was a problem with a customer, we did everything possible to win him back, which said a lot to our staff, to try to constantly win the guest at the table. We had a saying, you may remember this one, Eric, it was called WOCAT, winning one customer at a time. And if you think about the concession business, it's winning thousands of customers at a time, but we did it one at a time. So culture was a dominant part of Levy Restaurants, and it was a food culture. We revered the chefs. We revered anything to do with culinary. We had all kinds of famous chefs help us develop signature recipes.
So one of the things my mom reminded me of is that when I was an intern working for you, and this is, of course, before the internet and video calls and all that. So these are back in AT&T long distance calls. I called my mom to tell her about the job, the secret shopper, how much fun that was. And at some point, she was just trying to relate because she was working for the Baltimore Symphony and not in entrepreneurship or business. And she said to me something like, "Well, tell me something that you've learned." And I said to her, "I've learned that nice guys can finish first." There was that saying back then that nice guys finish last, but that was one of the things that I learned from you is that you can have high standards, high expectations, be a high performer, and you can also be nice in the way that you conduct yourself as well, which I think is pretty cool.
Thank you.
Mhm. So, so now you go through that transition and you form Levy Family Office, and you kind of shifted your interests to everything from philanthropy, like the entrepreneurship a program at Northwestern, and so many things that I know that you've done in giving back, but also then investing in young people and investing almost like as a family venture capital effort. Tell me what you went on to after Levy Restaurants.
Yeah, our office is really an investment office in all the different kinds of investments, but I had never really been an investor. My youngest son is a very good investor. He runs a hedge fund. He was helpful to me and located his hedge fund in that office. We've found a way. We're shareholders in um, SpaceX and Anthropic and uh, lots of other companies that are going to go do great things. Are doing great things, and we got to build the River Point building and the Salesforce Tower in partnership with Heinz, and One South Dearborn, which is Sidley and Austin's headquarters. So it's and then of course uh, in partnership with Crescent, we created Peakline Ventures to develop real estate all over the country, and that's been wonderful to reconnect with you to
I
do
know.
all those things.
I know. I have, 2 Larry Levy stories that I wanna make sure that as many people know as possible, especially young people. The first was my first day as an intern, and, I got to actually go into your office. You had that very cool desk, and this was, um gosh, I guess it was like in 1982, and you said there's a room and it has all these architectural drawings in it, and I want you to bring me a certain set of maps and drawings, maybe it related to One Mag Mile. And so I went into that room. It was my first day. There were all these rolled up papers in all these little pigeonhole like mailboxes. And I looked and looked top to bottom. I didn't want to disappoint. I went through it twice. I couldn't find it. And you said to me, I asked you to bring me these drawings, not an excuse. And if you have to call the architect and get another set of copies of the drawings brought over here, or if you have to go to Michigan Avenue to the Rand McNally's store and buy a set of drawings, bring me a solution and not more of a problem. And it was such an incredible thing for a kid because I realized, oh wow, I can solve problems. I don't have to go and ask you what to do. And it was very empowering and a great lesson. So that was an amazing. You probably don't remember it, but
I
it's
don't.
burned into my mind. Burned into my mind. And then another amazing time, ended up launching the Life Card, this healthcare technology company with my brother, who deferred from Harvard and never went, and I drop out of University of Chicago to go start this in Baltimore. And you had actually offered to help seed us if we needed the capital, but Blue Cross funded the business, and there was somebody I needed to meet, and so I called you in Chicago, and I said, "Larry, I'd like to meet this person," and you said, "Look, I'm happy to help you, but I do wanna tell you something that you just should know, and that is you've started your own business, and you can really talk to anybody. Pick up the phone, call them yourself, tell them that you know me, but you should be willing to call anybody." And it was also, again, kinda like that first day, it was an aha, "Oh, wow, I can do that." So that was another awesome
And
lesson
that's
that I
one of the
learned from
things
you.
I put in my memoir for my family, just that. You can call anybody in the world. Y As you get older, you have a easier access to that, but people are curious. They wanna talk to you. And if they don't wanna talk to you, they're probably not gonna be very good at what they do.
Yeah, yes, if they don't wanna talk to you, that probably tells you everything you need to know. So speaking of that, writing a memoir to your kids, if you were having dinner with yourself and you were with the 30-year-old version of you, what would you tell your younger self in terms of coaching and advice?
It's a great question, and I did write about one of the things is I would have gotten liquid earlier. I don't mean completely liquid. I would have sold a percentage of the business or something because it's not like living from paycheck to paycheck, but I was getting more and more successful, but didn't feel it. I didn't feel successful. And I think having cash in the bank would have helped me mentally. But I might not have worked as hard and been so ambitious. It's a little bit of a disease with me. I can't stop. To this day, I can't stop being ambitious.
I wrote about this in my notes to our kids, which is that as a family, we seize opportunities, and that's again something that I know is how you operate as well. You see an opportunity, and you want to you want to go after it. So Avi and I got together after I had retired from my business, and we were investing together. And one day we start talking about our experiences in family office, and then our experience with our Wall Street wealth managers, and and we decided to try and find a platform. We thought there must be a multifamily office or a platform for CEO founders like us. And when we didn't find it, we wrote a business plan and decided to start Crescent. And so we got all the way to the point where we were going to go into the William Blair building next to River Point. Avi was looking at office space that was on his to-do list. And I text you and I said, Larry, I'm coming back to Chicago. I'm starting a multifamily office and we're going to be neighbors. I'll be in the Blair building next door and it'll be wonderful to reconnect with you. And you texted me back. You said, I'm in Italy. You're not going into the Blair building. You're going to start your business in River Point. And how's this? You can start tomorrow in my family office. What could be more authentic than starting a multifamily office in Levy family office? And Avi and I moved into your office the next day, which was incredible.
And the competitive, anger and all that is still with me. I wasn't letting you go there.
I know, and now we have
A
the 47th floor of River Point
Yeah,
in all
you were nice enough to let me invest in Crescent too, which has turned out great.
Well, I mean, a founding investor, a founding client on the advisory board. It's really been incredible how our lives brought us back together and the
Wonderful.
entrepreneurial journey. It's so special. It really is.
And I've had lots of interns. There's no one more successful than you.
Oh, well, that is humbling and sweet. So a few other questions about entrepreneurship. Many times we all have the experience of something that we could have gone after and decided not to, and maybe it was a missed opportunity. When you look back on it, was there any big opportunity that you could have had but really missed out on?
It's funny, I don't think that way because I do what I want. I go after what I want. I'm sure there are a lot of them, stock market, the Nifty 50 and all that, but I wanted to build things. I wasn't trying to get rich. I was trying to accomplish things. I'm a design fanatic. I'm a music fanatic. I got to, and one of the bits of advice I would give is that to follow passions. My passions are food, music, um, sports. And if you look at what Levy Restaurants became, it involves all those things.
And I love that idea of pursuing our passions. I totally relate to that, and of course, I look at Crescent, and that came out of a need that Avi and I became very passionate about when we couldn't solve for it. When you think about leadership, like the idea that your successor at Levy Restaurants is still leading and succeeding with that multi-billion-dollar business, how do you think about leadership or even define leadership? What does leadership mean in your book?
It's a hard thing to define, but easy to recognize. Um, you know who the leaders are. They come in all sizes, they come in all industries, but it's the person that stands out that everybody else wants to follow and set a great, positive, optimistic example. And Andy certainly did that, and I think I did that while I was the leader. And I can tell you during those days of One Magnificent Mile, it was really hard to come to the office full, I mean, there was no apartment in Chicago that sold for more than $500,000 in the 3 years that I was trying to sell them, and we didn't have anything that sold for less than 500,000.
Incredible.
So,
A
yeah,
and I felt so lucky to actually be on the inside when that was happening because I still wanted to be an entrepreneur even though I
yeah,
saw that
exactly.
moment,
Yeah,
and it was gonna be inevitable that any entrepreneur faces their version of some version of that. That was an
yeah,
extreme one, but
that was
everyone
extreme.
Everyone faces it, and so to see you navigate that and to be positive, and was incredible, and so a few more questions that we'll wrap up. This has been so much fun to go through this history. I can't wait for my sons, Greg and Jake, to see this. But you talked about how Levy Restaurants, yeah, will be a long game company. A centurion is what we call them, 100. So that's 50 years from now. And when we think ahead 50 years from now, what do you hope people are saying about Levy Restaurants when it's 100 years old?
Well, I can tell you at 50 years, there's nobody close in terms of the quality of what we can do, and nobody has figured out that it's about the food and the Midwestern hospitality, whether it's in Australia, Los Angeles, New York. It's a magic formula. The food's gotta be great. You gotta hire from the best culinary schools, the best hotel and restaurant schools, and, the gap has widened instead of narrowed, which I would have thought it would have, and I think that'll be true 100 years from now.
And then one time you and I had a conversation about money in life and in business, and you made some comments about what the scorecard really is. And so when you think about the scorecard of a builder, if that's the theme of your life, what are the things that are measured on that scorecard for you?
Well, I have to answer by not answering. First, it's to be a great father and to be a great husband. Um, and, uh, it's all Carol and I talk about, and we spend our time. We have a granddaughter here right now who's a senior at Northwestern. But ask the question again. I got emotional and
Yeah, no, no, I
sharing.
get it with my own family, and so, yes, family first, but I was asking you your scorecard, of the life of a builder, these incredible things from building incredible important properties like River Point to building an incredible company like Levy Restaurants. What's on your scorecard? Because I know it's not measured in money, it's measured in other things, and what are those other things?
Yeah. One of the reasons, we made the, endowment to Northwestern for the Levy Institute is entrepreneurs create terrific jobs for people, and I think we did it with dignity,
Mhm,
jobs with dignity.
mhm.
I went with Carol to the US Open tennis tournament 2 years ago. All of these people that worked there came up to me and said, where their kids went to college, the homes they bought because we had 50 people in a, shared appreciation program, just like you've done at Crescent. Um, and, I think creating jobs is an important thing, creating good jobs, creating fun, creating, chances to grow. We created something called Keys to the Future, which I'm bragging about it. I did not do it myself. An early uh, uh, HR executive created it, which is you didn't have to go to college. We would put you through a program to train you up to be equivalent to the senior executives in your area because we were growing so fast. We had to do that.
I love that. And one of the things that Avi and I have tried to do, and you've been a part of it, is since Crescent came later in our careers, we not only created the kinds of jobs and that you're talking about, but we decided ultimately to make it an employee-owned company. And so Crescent is about 60% owned by the employees. And I remember, like when you were telling the story of the U.S. Open, I remember we made our first dividend to shareholders, 60% of I think it was 65% went to the employees, and I got hugs in the hallway, when we did our first dividend, and, it was an amazing milestone. So just to wrap it up with some fun lightning round questions. One is, since we did talk a lot about the incredible Levy restaurant business in these, ballpark venues starting there, what's your favorite ballpark food? If we went to the Cubs game together, what's your favorite?
Yeah, not good for you, but it would be a great grilled hot dog. I
Yeah.
love hot dogs.
Yes, me too. And then visiting your offices with that incredible collection that you have of photography of rock bands. Who's your favorite band of all?
So it's, in the middle of the night, I try to keep changing my top 10. And I saw a TikTok last night of Paul Simon breaking down Graceland, the song. He said it's a favorite song he ever wrote. Paul Simon is in maybe number one, but it's certainly in the top five. It, Simon and Garfunkel are right with him. Uh, James Taylor, Freddie Mercury, uh, s I don't know, it's a long the Eagles for sure are in, and we've gone 3 times to the Sphere to see them, which is I recommend everybody go to the Sphere. It's like if the best concert you ever saw was a 10, this is a 20. Uh, we saw Andrea Bocelli a month ago, we saw Rod Stewart last week. We just music's everywhere in our life, but, Paul Simon's probably at the top of the list.
Favorite Chicago restaurant?
So, I described before, we're not fancy, complex food eaters. I love for 2 reasons, I love the Let Us Entertain You restaurants. Rich Melman is the genius of the restaurant business. People talk about Danny Meyer, who's a great restaurateur, and other people, but if you think of all the different kinds of restaurants Rich has created, and we wind up going to his restaurants a lot, and the second reason, besides him being a great friend, is that competing with him versus competing with Aramark or Sports Service, was so hard. He has the best rewards program, all different kinds of things, and he captures our taste buds somehow.
He is amazing, and I've been to some of his restaurants with you and, like RPM Fish
Yep,
and, really he has done a wonderful job. Joe's in Chicago is such a wonderful place.
and Joe's in Washington is great.
Really, this whole program that we've done together, I think, is a masterclass in entrepreneurship. So, as I said earlier, I can't wait for my boys to see it, and I know that, so many people will benefit from your story. Larry, from the earliest days of starting businesses with my brother Doug and running companies over many years now, you and your family have been amongst the greatest cheerleaders, along with my own mom and dad. I know that much of what ultimately I've been able to do today can be traced back to that internship and your example that you set as an amazing builder and entrepreneur. You've been amazing in showing what's possible when you open yourself up to opportunities and have the courage to seize an opportunity. And I just want to publicly thank you for your mentorship and our friendship and for sharing your story with our Crescent audience today. So thanks so much.
And thanks to you, Eric. It's a real pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Before I let you go, if this episode resonated with you, please share it generously and please click the subscribe button below. Send this to someone in your world who's navigating a pivotal moment right now, someone who's staring down a decision and might need the reminder that recognizing the moment is half the battle. See you next time on The Long Game.
The Long Game, a Crescent podcast, is intended for information only and is not investment advice. Any company discussed is not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any security. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Please consult your advisors before making investment decisions.